Hello, hello. It is the DE Diva, aka the Delaware blogger, coming to you with another episode of Podcasting Your Purpose. This is actually episode 104. That's right, 104 episodes in this segment of Podcasting Your Purpose on Friday, the 11th of September. As we know, this is considered Patriots Day as we solemnly remember and reflect on September 11th, 2001. This is also a day that I think about not only the people that we lost during those attacks, but also on Monday will be the anniversary of the death of my sister, who in 1992 was killed tragically in a car accident. So September, bittersweet because not only of these events, but also, my birthday is on the 20th of September. So, things are kind of, you know, bittersweet for me. But like I said, when you wake up looking up, everything else is gravy, baby. So I am thanking God each and every day that I'm given another opportunity to walk and talk and to share. And that's what I'm doing here today, sharing with you another episode of Podcasting Your Purpose. And we're talking about podcast guests can be a pain in the ass. Yes. And that's why I'm kind of looking kind of wild. Not only is it Friday and this week was like just unbelievable. I lost a day. I think I lost a day with the holiday. And I think I mentioned this to you yesterday. But if you're a podcaster and you're a podcaster that interviews guests, remember, I used to interview guests on AAU Teen Talk Radio. I used to bring on guests. I had an hour live show where people could call in. It was a great time. And then when I went over to Elite Conversations, I also had the podcast Out and About with Antoinette, where I also interviewed others as well. So I've had experience with interviewing guests. I've had experience of having not the best guests. And I've also been guest, but I think I've been a pretty good guest. As a matter of fact, I'm going to leave the link to a recent interview that I had with my partner on his podcast, Studio 22 Live TV. We talked about, not only meeting at 1 million Cubs, but also love and marriage and Dell State and Bowie State and a whole bunch of other things. And I think I was a pretty good guest. And although you may think you're a pretty good guest, you may not. So I'm going to invite you to check out the May 29th episode that I wrote about podcast guests, the do's and the don'ts, so that you become a good podcast guest and not a podcast guest that's a pain in the us, right? Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit because, again, it is Friday. It's a dreary Friday here in the state of Delaware, but it's still almost the weekend. It's 3:33. When I first started, it's like 3:40. And you know what? Speaking of 3:33, that number has been coming into my head, into my atmosphere, into my space for months. And I don't have any idea what the 333 is meaning, but I keep seeing, I look up and it's 333 or a bill is 333 or something. So if you can tell me a little bit more about 333, and someone actually said it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I'm like, yeah, but why is it still popping up each and every time? So let's get into what we want to talk about today. Podcast guests being a pain in the That's right. So if you're a podcast guest, or if you are a podcast host, I should say you're a podcast host, and I could have sworn I put that on D&D. That's another thing you have to do. Make sure you put your phone on D&D so that you don't get any sounds or notifications while you are being interviewed or that you're interviewing others, because that is just so rude. Put it in airplane mode or D&D. That's one of the cardinal rules of doing something live, especially a podcast that you're being a guest on. So, you can send them the guest release form, which you should always send a guest release form, because two reasons why. It's going to contain their, signature, their DocuSign stating that you can use the interview for purposes of promotion. So they may be he or she may be a nobody today, and then tomorrow they turn out to be Oprah. They may not want you using or benefiting off of that podcast interview, but if you've got that disclosure, that release form, it's legally binding. You signed off on it. So when you're sending the guest release form, which you can create right in a Google Doc. I have one. I can send you a copy of it if you want. Just leave me a comment in the section below, and I will send you a copy of the guest release form that I used to use. And sometimes, again, you can send your guest the guest release form with the Q&As. You can ask them for their bio. You can ask for their picture. You can ask them for, what they want to talk about, what it is that they want to provide and promote. And you can get all that information out to them. But for some strange reason, either after the interview, they want to hear it before it goes live. I'm not letting you listen to the interview before it goes live. It's going to go live when I publish it. I'm not going to give you, especially if I've listened to it and I know it's good and I've told my, guests, oh, that was a great interview. And I've literally had guests say, can I hear it first? Can I hear it first? Can I hear it first? And I'm like, no, I don't want it out there until it's time to be published. So if they can't accept the fact that it was a good interview, then so be it. Then they'll say, oh, I don't like that picture. And it's like, duh, you're the one that sent me the picture. I'm using this in promotion. You can go through back and forth. So what I like to do, in addition to the guest release form, and this is strictly up to you, but it's worked for me over those years from 2016, 17, 18, and 19. I stopped interviewing in 2020. But what I did was I would literally write out a script. And anyone that's ever been on any of my shows on the Delaware Blogger podcast, which you can go and listen to, here's the link for that, Delaware Blogger podcast, where I used to have interviews, ask them. I always sent the Q&A, and it would say, show starts at, then I would tell them, turn off everything, put the kids away, put the dogs away. There's all kinds of things that you need to tell people to do before you press that record button. And then it would say what I said, host, Antoinette. And then it was, hello and welcome to the Delaware Blogger podcast. Today's episode number 9. We're talking about XYZ and my special guest is ABC, da 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 da. Hello and welcome to, and then the guests would have their portion where they could respond. So it went like that. And I also added in there that we would do some ad-libbing or some off-the-cuff conversation. But let me tell you something. When I knew what I needed to cover on my show. So if you're a podcast host, you know what you need to cover on your show. Do not allow your guests to dictate or go off on a tangent and talk about 50 million other things, because you've already promised your listeners that you are going to be covering certain things, and you want to make sure that you're covering those certain things. So don't let them, take over and sabotage your podcast because you are the host. And I was reading a comment yesterday in one of the Facebook forums, and one of the young ladies there, she was like really kind of upset. You could tell just by the way she was writing it. What do I do when my guest, wants to change this, wants to change, and they've done all these changes, everything's been done. Well, you know what you have to do? Like, you know what? You just don't do it. It's one of those interviews that becomes lost during, editing. You just don't air it. Just don't air it. It's just you put it in the bucket and you just don't do it, because it's better to not just get into all that drama than to just promote that podcast. And if you've already promoted it, just say, it's canceled, reschedule, new episode, whatever, or just skip that one altogether. But again, you have to remember that a podcast is your brand. It's your personality. It's you. You're the one speaking to the people that are popping their earbuds into their ears, and it's that one person that you're talking to. So don't let anybody sabotage your show. Make sure that when you're sending out these guest release forms, you're asking for how they pronounce their name. Do they have a preferred name? For example, my name is Antoinette, but people can call me the DE Diva. They can call me the Delaware Blogger. They can call me Tony if they want. So if the person has a preferred name, make sure that you get that so that you're greeting them in that way, and they can't complain about that. Make sure that if they are a member of any organizations or groups or societies or anything that they want, that it's, given to you as well. Their bio. Now you're going to read the whole bio. And I told people have sent me like a full bio, a full page bio. I'm not reading all that. I'm just taking out, little bits and pieces. I just need to let people know who you are and why you're on my show. So I'm only going to pick out the parts of your bio that's related to my niche, to my audience, or to the topic of my podcast. Again, it's your podcast. Ask them to send a headshot. If they don't like the headshot that they sent, that's too bad. You didn't force them to send that headshot. That's the headshot that they chose, and that's the headshot that you're going to use. And especially if you're ready started to promote it. No one wants to keep recreating the same Canva or paying somebody on Fiverr to keep recreating cover art. You have given them an opportunity to send a headshot. Also, that guest release form, again, they can start out as a nobody and end up being a big somebody, and you have the exclusive, rights to that interview before they were that big somebody. So make sure you get all of that. So use the Q&As, just type it out. Your name, your guest, your name, your guest, what you're going to talk about, and that will help them as well. Now, the only drawback about that is when you have someone that's actually reading verbatim from something from their website. You want to make sure that they're loose and they're calm and they're collected. So, you can have fun, say, oh, that was a great, and then ask them something that's going to be fun and light. Again, people want to feel comfortable. They want to hear a conversation. So make it very conversational. So those are just, a few tips. When you have a podcast guest that can be a pain in the arse, you don't give total control over your podcast. Let them know that you got this. You've been doing this for a while, even if it's your first show. You don't have to let them know, but you've got this, and if you have to, if it turns out that the guest was just all over the place, the sound was terrible, they may have been in their car, because some people literally have to go into their car if they have, if they don't want to disturb anybody else. And here's a tip that I gave to the attendees last night in the EC podcast Knowledge Academy. If someone's in a car, first of all, you don't want them to go Bluetooth, but if they're in a car, tell them to bring a blanket or a comforter with them into the car, and then they put it over their head. So then that's a buffering, because sometimes when you're in a car and it's a big car, a minivan or something like that, you got a lot of echo. So the voice is going to be bouncing off of the car, off of the door, off the windows, which is the worst thing. Glass is the worst absorber of sound. So have them get in with their, with the comforter, or what you call, what are those things called? Zipper bag, like when you go camping. You know what I'm talking about. Sleeping bags. Yeah, that's what it is. Sleeping bags. So something that's going to absorb the sound. So they have that there. They can have their earphones in and they're talking on the phone. But underneath, they've got that cover there. So that helps out as well. So make sure that 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 they're not walking around. And again, if it turns out that the podcast interview sounds really, really yucky, ask them, hey, can we redo this? Or B, just don't do it at all. So that's my tips for today. When you have podcast guests that can be a pain in the arse and that you just don't, it's like, what do you do? Again, remember, it's your podcast. You're going to do what you want to do. You have to do you, boo-boo. It's your brand. So if you're ready to learn more, you're ready to launch your podcast, make sure you send an email to me at info@ablakeenterprises.com to schedule your 30-minute complimentary discovery call, and then get signed up for that 2-hour coaching session. You'll get with that my Podcasting Your Purpose resource guide. You remember what this is? This is going to take you step by step, setting you up, and we'll start out on the Anchor FM platform. So we lead up to that, from starting out from what is a podcast all the way up to creating your podcast on Anchor FM. And I also will give you some printables. I have planners. You have 30 days after the fact for unlimited emails and text messaging. We also get you in the Facebook group, the Podcasting Your Purpose Facebook group, and so much more. So it's a real great investment for yourself. $159 for that 2-hour course. You'll get the book, which is normally $15.99, and it's available on Amazon.com. You can order that yourself there. If you're interested in learning more about blogging, yes, blogging tips. And I have that podcast, Blog Your Way to a Business Profit, every Wednesday at 1:00. And I talk about blogging on Blog Your Way to a Business Profit. And again, I want to thank everyone who listened to my show in the month of August. I came in number 12 and tied for number 25 in the podcast host recognition. every Tuesday and Thursday on the EC Podcast Knowledge Academy. We have webinars where we cover different topics. Last night, I talked about using your podcast to monetize your business, whether it's your own product and services or with an affiliate. Tomorrow is an open house. We're having those at least once or twice a month. The link to that is going to be in the show notes here. I ask that you subscribe to my channel, thumbs up this video, share it with your family and friends. And again, I thank you for supporting me on all my social media platforms, which you can find by going to the Linktree ID, dellblogger.com. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Mouth is dry. Keep something close by. Tomorrow, again, is the 10 o'clock open house for Elite Conversations. If you're interested in that, send an email to me at info@ablakeenterprises.com and get you signed up. Because you know what? With a podcast, you can use your vision, your voice, and your mission to literally change someone's life. Make sure you listen to my podcast interview with Mr. Fred Fitzgerald. I wasn't an Osh when I did my guest podcast interview with him. But if you are and you know of others, relax, release. Again, to all and everyone who is commemorating today, which we all are, to any and everyone that's lost anybody at 9/11 or during this COVID-19 pandemic or just natural causes, unnatural causes, know that you can get through this. You can survive this. God is good. Life is good. And when you wake up looking up, everything else is gravy, baby. So have a beautifully blessed weekend. I'll see you. Probably not on Monday because I'll be down at the cemetery, but enjoy the rest of this day and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.